Albert Breer back here on the Rich Eisen Show from Sports Illustrated and the MMQB. How are you, Albert?
I'm good. I'm sorry for my tardiness.
No, what's going on?
Call it went a little long.
Did you get a scoop?
My apologies.
Did you get a scoop? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. No, it was a productive phone call. It just went a little longer than I thought it would, but we're good.
Okay,
we're good.
Very good. What's your overarching impression of Week 1, Albert? What do you got for me on that?
And I think this is sort of like an abstract thing, but I try to think of big league trends, after the first week, because I don't think it's, I don't think you should be crowning anybody or indicting anybody in Week 1. And so the one thing that really stuck out to me, Rich, was seeing the way Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady sort of lifted their teams up and made it so their teams didn't need to be perfect. And, you think of the Chiefs getting off to a slow start, falling behind by double digits. You think of the Bucs turning the ball over, Godwin dropping what I think we all expected to be a touchdown pass, fumbling inside the 5, in the fourth quarter, and how these guys had this great ability to just kind of erase all of it. And, in a roundabout way, Rich, it made me think about what the Rams did this offseason and what the Niners did this offseason. The Rams and Niners both had quarterbacks in their 20s. Both those teams had been to the Super Bowl with those quarterbacks. And, now both those teams are moving off of those quarterbacks. And, it's obviously happening more gradually in San Francisco than in Los Angeles, but the idea is the same. And I just think I know that this is after 1 week and everything else, Rich, but I think it's the Mahomes-ization of the NFL. I think it's we're at this place now at the quarterback position where just being good isn't good enough. And I think you can even connect it to the Dolphins potentially moving off of Tua this quickly to go in to get Deshaun Watson. Now, who knows if that's going to happen 6 months from now? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But it's just, I think, another example of the way people are thinking differently at that position. And I think part of it is, you're looking up at that mountain. You know what I mean? And, the Rams had the number 1 defense in the league last year, and they go into Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers hangs 32 points on them, and they're out of the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. The Niners, who's their head coach? Kyle Shanahan. And what's his experience in the Super Bowl? Well, he had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter with the Niners, and Mahomes made that not matter. And then 3 years earlier, where was he? He was the Falcons' offensive coordinator in the Super Bowl, gets up 28-3, and Brady made that not matter. And so I think that's sort of an overarching thought that I took away from Week 1 was how we saw this quarterback movement in the offseason. We saw teams that normally you wouldn't think would be in the quarterback market get in the quarterback market. And then I think Brady and Mahomes in a certain way in Week 1 once again showed us why.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. You had just mentioned about, the Watson the swing for the Watson fences that the Dolphins stepped in a batter's box, to mix metaphors, and took a swing at a couple of weeks before the regular season. Tua and the Dolphins won in New England. Nobody's sitting here and talking about what an incredible performance Tua had, like we're talking about for, say, Jalen Hurts, of all people, right? Or some of the rookie quarterbacks that we saw, even then they didn't win. Nationally, nobody's saying, well, Tua came out with that W. What is going on with that? I mean, really put my ear to the ground here on what you're hearing about Tua and Miami and whether they really are all in, despite our colleague Jeff Darlington saying that the coach gathered everyone together to say this is our quarterback. What is going on there, Albert?
I mean, I think Brian Flores is very well in tune with what his team needs. And I think there was a period there where he probably felt like, this is just me, surmising, that the other 52 people in that locker room needed to hear from the coach that Tua was their guy. That said, I can tell you that the debate over who they should take 5th overall a year and a half ago was robust. And my understanding was Justin Herbert had some support in that room. And look, they wouldn't be human if they wouldn't be looking at Justin Herbert and thinking to themselves, "Oh my God," you know what I mean? Did we make a mistake here? Time will tell whether or not that's the case. But I do think they feel pretty strongly, and just knowing some people who have connections to that organization and everything else, like they feel pretty strongly after 3 off seasons of building behind Brian Flores and the general manager there, Chris Breer. Like they've got a team that's not only ready to get to the playoffs, but ready to win when they get to the playoffs. And it kind of ties back to that whole thing that I said is like, is your quarterback good enough? And I think there was a time in the league when you could win with a little bit less at that position if you're really good everywhere else. Now it feels like if you're not really good at that position, then you need to be perfect everywhere else. And, I think that's going to be a question going forward with Tua is he good enough? Because I think a lot of people in the NFL, and this isn't like Dolphins people saying this to me, but a lot of other people who get paid to evaluate this stuff, like they watch him at Alabama and it's like, well, he's instinctive and he plays fast and he's accurate. And then he gets on the NFL field last year, and a lot of that stuff just looked sort of average, And so I think the question isn't whether or not Tua can play right now. I think they know he can play right now. I think most people believe Tua can get you to the playoffs right now, right? The question is, can he elevate and can he become, a top 10 type of quarterback? And if he can't get there, does that mean the Dolphins are in the sort of situation maybe the Rams were with Jared Goff? Where you got to ask yourself some hard questions. They're already asking that question. You could understand why, if there's a guy who, is 25 years old and has 5 years left on his quarterback and has already been a top 5 quarterback in Deshaun Watson, you would seriously look at something like that.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's going on with the Cowboys up front? What can you tell me about Tank Lawrence, Randy Gregory? Big game for the Cowboys here in Los Angeles against the Chargers. What do you know about that?
Yeah, so I think DeMarcus Lawrence, obviously, that's a really unfortunate break for them. And he's had injuries in the past, and I don't know if I'd relate it to that because it's a foot thing and it's sort of a freak thing, but he's going to be gone for 2 months. And that, to me, you just sort of look at how patchwork they've been, and they'll get Gregory back, but with Randy Gregory and then over the years taking swings on different guys like Alden Smith and if you want to go further back, Greg Hardy, and how they've just sort of continually rolled the dice to try and get those positions right. And Lawrence was the one that they really hit on. And now he's out for 2 months. And, I think the Cowboys defensively did a lot of things well in the opener. But the fact is, such a big part of the way that defense works, and I think Dan Quinn's a fantastic defensive coordinator, but a big part of how the defense works, the Seattle type of defense works is, can you get heat on the passer, and can you come from multiple angles and hit the quarterback? And DeMarcus Lawrence is one of those guys, when he's at his best, he changes the math for everybody else. He's going to change the matchups. He's going to get more guys singled up. More guys are going to be favorable spots because of him. So now you take him out of the equation, and I think it's a big, big loss for the Cowboys. So, Dan Quinn's going to be earning his money over the next couple of months. Their hope is they get DeMarcus Lawrence back, and for the second half of the season. And I think that there's real reason to believe that's going to happen. But until then, how do you make it work? And I think it's a very real question. It's a big, big loss for the Cowboys.
A few minutes left with Albert Breer, the MMQB senior NFL reporter here on the Rich Eisen Show. So. The passing game in San Francisco, as if there's not enough question marks about what Kyle Shanahan's thinking and really meaning when he talks about his quarterbacks. Jimmy G gets the start, but Trey Lance is the one who throws the first touchdown pass of the season. And then, of course, it's who he threw it to, a kid that hardly anybody's ever really heard of. And Brandon Aiyuk gets 0.0, like the full Blutarski, for week 1, and yesterday's comment about how he needs to be better than the guy behind him, but he's really hurt. What is going on with this offense in San Francisco, Albert?
I think we're going to see, I think we're going to see some version of what we saw at quarterback for the foreseeable future. And I'm not saying past this year, of course. It's eventually going to become Trey Lance's show, but for this year, as long as they're winning, I think you're going to see a version of what we saw on Sunday, which is, Trey Lance basically as a spot player. He's come a long way, but he had a long way to go, and I don't think he's ready to be the starter, at least, in Kyle's estimation to this point, what he wants in a starting quarterback. The good news is I think Jimmy played really, really well on Sunday. And just talking to him after the game, you can hear how comfortable he is. And I think there's almost like a frustration there in that he's finally gotten to the point where he feels like he's mastered Kyle's offense. And he's probably on the way out the door, after this year. But that said, for this year, I think it puts the Niners in a good spot. I also sort of wonder if Brandon Aiyuk is where Deebo Samuel was last year, where, I think there's just sort of, different levels you get to in that offense, and it's an intricate offense to play in for a receiver. Kyle, of course, his background is in receivers, and he looks for very specific things in receivers. And so, I think there's a next step that Brandon Aiyuk has to take. And, I think part of the process here is them pushing him to get there. And I think most people would tell you Deebo Samuel took a step back last year, right? I think that's fair, Rich, that Deebo wasn't quite what everybody expected him to be last year. And then he goes into year 3, and what happens? He explodes. And so, maybe it's just a part of the process. Maybe things come together faster. Maybe he can stay healthy better than Deebo could last year. But I do think that Brandon Aiyuk is sort of in that process. And so I think you're referencing Trent Sherfield, who was excellent during camp. And he was somebody all those guys at the Niners building were talking about over the course of the 4 or 5 weeks of training camp. I think what Trent Sherfield's done is given them a little flexibility where if they need more developmental time for Brandon Aiyuk and to bring him along, try to get him to the level Deebo Samuel is at now, they can do that because they think they've got a veteran player who's capable of filling a role for them.
All right, Albert Breer, I appreciate the time, and I understand that you were on a call, very important call to start off. I'm just wondering if you were doing that to kill time so you wouldn't have to answer the following question. Which program in the history of the historical alliance between the Big Ten and ACC and Pac-12 actually won an interconference game with a team in the historic alliance? Which program's the first one to carry the mantle on behalf of the Big Ten in that historic alliance?
Well, if we're talking about Michigan winning big games, it must be September, Rich. So I will.
No. I don't know if that's the answer to the question. Well, you kind of answered it.
It would be. It would be your Michigan Wolverines.
That's okay,
yeah,
Albert. Look, we'll just.
Rich,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Rich, I will say, our guys have a lot of work to do. Your guys, to have the amount of coaching turnover that they had, I thought beyond just the win, and I'm being objective.
Yes.
I thought it was a very nice win, not just because I don't think Washington's very good, but I think it was a nice win because stylistically it looked a certain way. I thought they were very impressive in the way that they played and the way the whole operation looked on Saturday. So you can chalk that one up. Another nice September win for the Wolverines.
Oh my goodness gracious! Chris, I need oxygen because somebody just took the high road here, and I wasn't expecting that. I'm getting a little dizzy. I might get the bends.
My goodness.
Okay, very good.
The key word there being September.
No, I know that. I get it, but just it's a 1 week at a time business, as you know. In the world of football,
you can't win in November and September. That's fair.
Albert, thanks for the call, brother. You be well. We'll chat soon.
All right, thanks.
That's the one and only Albert Breer right here. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.